Hello and welcome to livealittlehigher.com. This week we will finish chapter 10 of the book of Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg, The Mystery of Marriage on Shalom Bayit, Peace in the Home with Hospitality. And last week we were talking about how love is what makes a home, how important it is to have love and people that share that love and express that love one towards the other. This week the book is talking about hospitality, and hospitality is a very Jewish concept. It's called Ochnasas Orehim. It's a very important mitzvah, and we see it first in Bereshit, in the first book of the Torah, when Abraham was always eager to invite guests to his tent and serve them food. So much more than when he had his Brit Milah done when he was 100 years old. On the third day of his bris, that it's the most painful day, he was talking to Hashem in the scorching sun, and he decided to send 3 angels to make him happy, to do both 2 mitzvahs. One is Bikur Holim, is visit the sick, and the second mitzvah was Ochnasas Orehim, because he was very sad that nobody had been coming to his tent. So here we see how important this concept of opening our homes to those who need to be taken care of is very much a big component of Jewish life. And basically, Ochnasas Orehim is done nowadays when people don't have a place where to stay for Shabbat or for a Yom Tov, for a holiday. But nowadays there's hotels everywhere, and there's accommodations that not necessarily have to be in a person's home. So another thing here is that the sages teach us that welcoming guests is greater even than greeting the Shaheena. The Shaheena is the divine presence of Hashem. So for Hashem, it's more important that we take care of each other, that we take care of Him. And we see that Abraham was talking to God, and when he saw the 3 angels coming disguised as men, he thought they were men. He stopped talking to God and he ran to take care of these 3 guests. And it says also that we would think that the guest would infringe in the intimacy of the home, in the privacy of the home, but here the book and the Kabbalah teaches that it's the other way around. When we have guests in our house, it enhances the home, and it brings a different element to the home. So the private intimacy between husband and wife is a form of greeting the Shaheena. When the wife and the husband are together in harmony and in peace, it's a way in which they greet the Shaheena, the divine presence. And this is because the Shaheena dwells between 2 people that love each other, that take care of each other. And the Shaheena is considered the feminine side of divinity. It has a feminine connotation. And when the Shaheena went into exile after the destruction of the temples, this Shaheena, this divine presence of Hashem, longs to be in its home. So when the guests come to the house, they bring a spark of that Shaheena. They bring that exiled part of God that longs, that wants to be home. And every guest who finds even a temporary resting place in one's house carries a spark of this Shaheena. So in a Kabbalistic way, we can see how important it is to open our homes to guests, because they are the ones that are bringing the holiness to the home. We think we're doing a favor to them, but in reality, they are the ones that are bringing a spark of God into the house. And to extend hospitality is thus a welcome sparks of spiritual desire into one's homes. And these sparks awaken and enhance the wife's fire, holy fire, and her passion and desire towards her husband. So in a mystical level, when we have guests in our home, this awakens in the wife that love that she has for her husband, that passion she has for her husband. And it says here that it increases the potential of fertility in the wife. And this is evident from the biblical account of Abraham. We go back to Abraham, whose wife Sarah was barren for many, many years. She could not conceive a child. And when he went and greeted these three guests and he took care of them, one was the angel Michael, came to bring good news and tell them that next year they were going to have babies. They were going to have a child. And Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mesrich, told Rabbi Shneur Salman of Liadi about hospitality. He says, hospitality facilitates fertility. As it is said, how shall a youth married to this path? This is Psalm 119, which may be read, how can one merit a child? By hosting guests. So this is one of the keys to having children, is to being to host guests in our home. And still, Rabbi Ginsburg ends here saying that anyways, as great as this mitzvah is, it is very important that the husband and the wife make it a point on how many guests they're going to have every month or every week. Maybe it's not every time, because the husband, they call him, they say, oh, I need a place to stay. He'll always say, yes, come to my house. But in reality, he has to ask the wife first to make sure that it's okay with her, because as big as a mitzvah is, the Shaheena is in her. The guest is a spark of the Shaheena, but the wife represents the Shaheena of God. And she has to be willing to do it, because if it's too much for her and it's too much pressure and it's a lot of work and she's not up to it because it's overwhelming for her, then the husband has to understand that it has to be accommodating for her. It has to be okay with the wife, because at the end of the day, the home is the wife, and the one that is going to do all that work is her. Even if the husband helps a lot, she's the one that carries the responsibility of taking care of the guests. And to give you a short story about my experience with Ochnasas Orehim, I come from a non-religious family, so we never grew up with this mitzvah. In Colombia, it was unheard of that you would have guests sleeping in your house, people you didn't even know, for Shabbat or for a holiday. This was something that was very foreign for me. And when I became a Bal Shuvah, this became a normal staple of my home. And at the beginning, it was very, very hard, because we're private people. It's not easy to open your house to people you don't know. But from my experience, my personal experience, I can say that greeting guests in your home, having guests in your home, really bring a lot to the home. You think you're doing a mitzvah, and in reality, they're doing a mitzvah for you. And many, many years ago, I received a call 2 hours before Shabbat, and it was a rabbi from Israel who had just arrived to Miami, and he was staying in my community. A person from the community had lent them the home. He was in a different city, and he had lent them the home, and the neighbor was supposed to wait for them with a key. And she was nowhere to be seen, and she wouldn't answer the phone, and Shabbat was approaching, and this rabbi was getting very nervous. So I get this call from this rabbi, and it's 2 hours before Shabbat. So my husband and I, we decide to bring him and the other rabbi that was with him to our home last minute for Shabbat. And when they came into the home, it was an elderly man, Rabbi Morgenstein and Rabbi Sirkin, and they asked me that they need to cook their own food. And I look at them like, what? Can't you eat my food? It's kosher. So he looks at me and he laughs and he says, you know what? I'm a healer, and I don't eat just any food. I eat very plain, and we don't use salt, we don't use pepper, we don't use anything. And I need to cook this turkey. And he brings out this turkey, and I'm like, but my kitchen, I don't give it to anybody. And he looks at me and says, it's kosher for you. And it was obviously from a kosher place in the South Beach. And I say, okay, cook the turkey. So I take out a pot from my kitchen, and he says, no, I cannot use your pot. I have to use my pot. My pot is ironclad. I only use ironclad pots. So my husband and I were looking at each other. Says, okay, what can we do? We're not going to leave them without food. So he cooked his meal, and at the end of Shabbat, he looked at me and he said, you know what? You cannot eat wheat. You should not eat wheat. You're very highly allergic to wheat. And I had been suffering from a lot of pain in my body for many, many years. I had joint pain and inflammation, and every time I woke up, it was very hard for me to get straight. It was very painful. And I went to many, many doctors, and nobody could find a cause for my pain. Even they said you should go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, maybe there's something with your head, it's depression. But nobody could ever pinpoint my problem. And this rabbi, he came, and in one night, just by looking at me, he said, this is your problem. And I had been experiencing all this pain for, like, I could say 6-8 years. And I said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna try it. And I stopped eating wheat, and like 15 days later, all the pain went away. And my daughter had been experiencing a very, very bad cold for 2 months, and she had been taking antibiotics and this and that, and nothing helped. And he gave her a big dose of vitamin C through Shabbat, and at the end of Shabbat, she was completely cured. So I ask you, who brought the blessing here? Was it us by hosting them, or was it them by coming to us? So I leave you with this. I wish you a good week, a happy week, and live a little higher. Thank you.